Linda Chen had been married to Robert Mitchell for 30 years when she found the receipt. It was a Tuesday in March, unremarkable in every way, except one. It was their anniversary. 30 years. She'd been planning to make his favorite dinner, pot roast with those little potatoes he loved. Maybe open a bottle of the wine they'd been saving. Nothing fancy. After 3 decades, you didn't need fancy. She was doing laundry when she found it, tucked in the pocket of his khakis. Just a crumpled piece of paper from the Marriott downtown. Room service for 2. Champagne, chocolate-covered strawberries. Charged to his credit card 3 nights ago, when he told her he was working late on the Henderson account.
Linda sat down on the edge of their bed, the bed they'd shared for 30 years, in the house they'd bought together when interest rates were still reasonable and the neighborhood was up and coming. And she didn't cry. That was the strange part. She thought she should be crying, but instead she just felt cold, analytical, like her brain had shifted into a different gear. She looked around the bedroom, at the dresser Robert had inherited from his mother, at the photos on the wall, their wedding, vacations to Yellowstone and the Grand Canyon, their daughter Emma's graduation from Cornell, at the master bathroom they'd renovated 5 years ago after that pipe burst and caused all that water damage. The house, their house.
Except it wasn't their house, was it? Linda walked downstairs to her home office, the converted sunroom where she managed the books for her small accounting practice, and pulled out the file cabinet. 3rd drawer down, green folder labeled Property Documents. There it was, the deed to 428 Sycamore Drive, Westchester County, New York. Sole owner, Linda Marie Chen. She'd bought this house in 1992, 2 years before she married Robert. Back then, she'd been Linda Chen, CPA, with her own practice and her own money and her own life.
Her parents, first-generation immigrants who'd clawed their way up from nothing, had taught her to be practical. Always keep something in your own name, her mother had said, just in case. Linda had nodded, thinking she'd never need that advice. Robert wasn't like that. Robert was different. Except now, Robert was apparently the kind of man who charged champagne and strawberries to a hotel room while his wife waited at home. Linda put the deed back in its folder and pulled out her phone. She didn't call Robert. Instead, she called someone she hadn't spoken to in years, Marcus Chen, her younger brother, who worked as a private investigator in Manhattan. "Linda, is everything okay?" Marcus sounded surprised. They'd had a falling out years ago over their mother's estate. Nothing terrible, just the kind of family tension that makes you stop calling. "I need your help," Linda said. Her voice was steady, calm. "And I need you not to ask questions yet." There was a pause. Then, "Give me an address." Robert came home at 7:30 that night, loosening his tie as he walked through the door. He was 55, still handsome in that weathered way, with gray at his temples and a gym membership he actually used. "Hey, hun," he called out. "Sorry I'm late. The Henderson thing is dragging on forever." Linda was in the kitchen, the pot roast in the oven, filling the house with the smell of comfort and normalcy. "No problem." "Dinner's almost ready." They ate at the dining room table, making small talk about his work, her clients, whether they should visit Emma in Seattle next month. Robert was charming as always, asking about her day, complimenting the dinner. He'd always been good at this, the performance of being a husband. "Happy anniversary," he said, raising his wine glass. 30 years, Linda replied, touching her glass to his. "Hard to believe. Best decision I ever made, marrying you." Linda smiled and took a sip of wine. Inside, her mind was working through scenarios, calculations, possibilities. The analytical part of her brain, the part that had built a successful accounting practice from scratch, was fully engaged now. "Robert," she said carefully, "if you ever wanted to leave, you'd tell me, right? You wouldn't just disappear." He looked startled. "What? Where is this coming from?" "Just thinking about the Hendersons. Their divorce was so messy." Linda cut another piece of meat. "I'd want us to be civilized about it, if it ever came to that." "Linda, we're not getting divorced." Robert reached across the table and took her hand. His palm was warm, familiar. "I love you, you know that." "I know," Linda said, and she smiled. Marcus called her the next morning while Robert was at work. "You want the good news or the bad news?" Linda was at her desk, reviewing a client's quarterly taxes. "Bad news first. He's been seeing someone, 26-year-old named Brittany Summers, works as a social media influencer and lifestyle coach, which I think means she posts pictures of her ass on Instagram and sells diet tea. They've been together for about 8 months. 8 months. Linda felt that cold sensation again, spreading through her chest. The good news? She's got a record. Not Brittany Summers, that's a fake name. Real name is Bethany Sullivan. She's got 2 prior convictions for fraud in Nevada and Florida, credit card scams, identity theft. She's been moving around, working under different names. I've got copies of everything. Send them to me. Linda, what are you planning? I'm not sure yet. Linda stared at the photos on her desk. Emma's graduation, a family vacation to Cape Cod, Robert's 50th birthday party. But I'll figure it out. The confrontation came 2 weeks later, and Robert didn't even have the decency to let her start it. He came home on a Thursday night with a suitcase packed. "Linda, we need to talk." She was in the living room, reading a book. She'd been waiting for this. "Okay." "I'm leaving." He set the suitcase down by the door. "I've fallen in love with someone else. Her name is Brittany. I'm moving in with her." Linda closed her book carefully, marking her place. "I see." "That's it? That's all you have to say?" Robert looked almost disappointed, like he'd been expecting a bigger scene. "What would you like me to say, Robert?" "I don't know. Something, anything." He ran his hand through his hair. "Look, I didn't plan this. It just happened. She makes me feel young again, alive, like I'm not just going through the motions." "And I made you feel like you were going through the motions." "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." Linda stood up. She was 53, with silver threads in her black hair and smile lines around her eyes. She'd spent 30 years building a life with this man. "What do you want from the house?" Robert blinked. "What?" "The house, the furniture, your things. What do you want to take?" I don't know. I hadn't thought about it." "Think about it now." He looked around the living room, at the sectional sofa they'd bought at Pottery Barn, the flat-screen TV, the bookshelves full of books they'd collected together. "I don't need much. Just my clothes, my personal items. You can keep the furniture. Keep everything." "Are you sure? This is a lot of stuff, Robert. We've accumulated a lot over 30 years. Brittany has her own place. It's small, but it's perfect. I don't need all this stuff." He gestured vaguely. "You keep it." "I just want a clean break." Linda nodded slowly. "A clean break. I'll come by this weekend to get the rest of my clothes, when you're out." "Take your time," Linda said. "Take whatever you want." Robert grabbed his suitcase. At the door, he paused. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. You're a good person, Linda. You deserve better." "I know," Linda said. And then he was gone. Linda waited exactly 3 minutes after Robert's car pulled out of the driveway. Then she picked up her phone and called Marcus. "He's gone. Start phase 2. "You're sure about this?" "Completely sure." "All right, I'll make the calls." Linda's next call was to Emma in Seattle. "Mom?"
"What's wrong?" Emma could always tell from her voice. "Your father and I are separating. He's moved in with his girlfriend." Silence. Then, "Are you fucking kidding me?" "Language, sweetie." "Mom, Dad left you after 30 years? Who is she? I'll kill him. I'll actually kill him." "Her name is Brittany Summers. She's 26, and you're not going to kill anyone." Linda walked to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of wine. "But I do need you to do something for me. Anything. Come home next week. I'm going to need a witness." Robert had always been careless about details. That was one of the things Linda had loved about him back in the beginning. He was big picture, spontaneous, the dreamer to her planner.
She'd thought they balanced each other out. Now she realized it meant he'd never read the deed to their house, never looked at the mortgage documents when they'd refinanced, never paid attention to who owned what. The house at 428 Sycamore Drive was 100% in Linda's name. Robert had never paid a dime of the mortgage. She'd owned it outright before they married, one of the few properties she'd inherited when her father passed. All the renovations, the upgrades, the new roof 3 years ago, all paid for with her money from her accounting practice. In New York, that mattered. Linda spent the weekend going through the house room by room, documenting everything. She took photos, made lists, checked receipts.
The furniture, the appliances, the artwork, most of it had been purchased with her income. Robert had always made decent money as a marketing consultant, but Linda's practice had been the steady revenue stream. Sunday evening, she made a call to her lawyer, Patricia Wong, who'd handled her business incorporation and various real estate transactions over the years. "Linda, I heard about Robert. I'm so sorry." "Don't be. I need your advice on something." Patricia listened as Linda laid out the situation. The house, the assets.
Robert's assumption that they'd have some sort of amicable split. "In New York, you'd normally be looking at equitable distribution," Patricia said. "But if the house is solely in your name, purchased before the marriage, and he's voluntarily abandoned the property, you've got leverage." "That's what I thought. What about the utilities?" "What about them? The gas, electric, water, they're all in my name. If I wanted to discontinue service..." There was applause. "Linda, what are you planning?" Hypothetically, if Robert came back to get his belongings and the utilities happened to be turned off, that wouldn't be illegal, would it? Not if you're not living there either.
You can't shut off utilities to force someone out of a property they're occupying. But if the house is empty and you're the account holder, Patricia's voice took on a careful tone, where would you be staying? "I'm thinking of visiting Emma in Seattle for a few weeks. I need a break anyway." "Then, hypothetically, you could contact the utility companies and request temporary discontinuation of service while you're away, for safety reasons." "For safety reasons," Linda repeated. "And the heating system?" "If there's a mechanical issue that requires repair, and you as the homeowner choose to have the system serviced while you're away, that's certainly within your rights." Linda smiled. "Thank you, Patricia." "Linda, be careful."
"I know you're angry, but I'm not angry," Linda said, and she realized it was true. She wasn't angry. She was done.
I'm just protecting my assets. Marcus came through with the information on Brittany/Bethany faster than Linda expected. She's working the long con, he explained, spreading documents across Linda's dining room table. She targets middle-aged guys going through a crisis, makes them feel special, young, desired, gets them to move in with her, sometimes gets them to buy her a car or pay off her debts. Then once she has access to their bank accounts or credit cards, she drains them and disappears. How much has she taken from Robert so far? Hard to say for sure, but I pulled his credit report. Don't ask how. He's got 2 new credit cards opened in the last 3 months, both near maxed out. About $40,000 in new debt. And he just wrote her a check for $15,000, supposedly for her business investment. Linda felt a twinge of something. Not quite sympathy. Maybe pity. Robert was an idiot, but he'd been her idiot for 30 years. What's her pattern after she's drained them? She moves on. Usually leaves them broke and humiliated. Sometimes they don't even report it because they're too embarrassed. Not this time, Linda said. This time, we're reporting it. Emma arrived from Seattle on Tuesday, taking a week off from her job as a software engineer. She was 31, brilliant, and fiercely protective of her mother. She'd inherited Linda's analytical mind and her grandmother's stubborn streak. "I can't believe Dad did this," she said, pacing around Linda's office. 30 years, Mom! 30 years, and he throws it away for some Instagram thirst tap. Emma, what? That's what she is. I looked her up. Her whole feed is bikini shots and motivational quotes about living your best life and not settling for less. She's a walking midlife crisis cliché. She's also a con artist, Linda said calmly. She handed Emma the folder Marcus had compiled. Read this. Emma flipped through the pages, her expression darkening. Holy shit! Does Dad know? I doubt it. He sees what he wants to see. We have to tell him. No. Mom! Emma, listen to me. Linda took her daughter's hands. Your father made his choice. He chose to leave his marriage, his home, his family. He chose to trust a woman he barely knows over the wife who stood by him for 3 decades. Now he gets to live with the consequences of that choice. But if we just showed him, he wouldn't believe it. Right now he's in love. He thinks he's found his soulmate. If we tried to warn him, he'd just think we were jealous or vindictive. He has to learn this lesson on his own. Emma stared at her mother. When did you get so cold? I'm not cold, sweetie. I'm practical.
Your grandmother taught me that. Linda released Emma's hands and stood up. Now, let's go over the timeline. Your father is coming to get the rest of his things on Saturday. You and I are flying to Seattle on Friday. Before we leave, I'm having the utilities shut off and the HVAC system serviced. What does serviced mean? Linda smiled. It means that when your father arrives on Saturday to collect his belongings, he's going to find a very dark, very cold house with no running water. That's evil. That's property management. Tommy Rodriguez had been Linda's HVAC guy for 15 years. He'd installed the new furnace, maintained the AC, always came when she called.
He was reliable, professional, and most importantly, he owed her a favor. You sure about this, Mrs. Mitchell? Tommy asked as he worked in the basement on Thursday afternoon. I mean, it's your system, but I'm sure, Tommy. I need the whole thing shut down and drained. I'll be away for a few weeks, and I don't want any issues while the house is empty. But it's March, still gets cold at night. If someone was staying here without heat, no one will be staying here. The house will be empty. Tommy nodded slowly, understanding more than Linda was saying. Okay, I'll drain the system, shut down the gas line, and lock out the thermostat. You'll need to call me when you get back to get everything running again. Perfect. Send me the bill. Mrs. Mitchell, Tommy paused at the basement stairs. For what it's worth, Mr. Mitchell's an idiot. Linda laughed, the first real laugh she'd had in weeks. Thank you, Tommy. Friday morning, Linda made her calls. Con Edison? Yes, I'd like to temporarily disconnect service at 428 Sycamore Drive. I'll be out of the country for several weeks. That's right, just shut it all off for safety. Yes, I understand there's a reconnection fee. Same conversation with the water company and the gas company. By noon, 428 Sycamore Drive was a shell. No power, no heat, no water. Just walls and furniture, and 30 years of accumulated stuff that Robert had decided he didn't need. Linda and Emma flew to Seattle that afternoon.
Robert showed up at the house on Saturday morning with Brittany and a U-Haul truck. He'd texted Linda on Friday, "Coming tomorrow to get my stuff. We'll leave the key on the counter when I'm done." Linda hadn't responded. Robert pulled into the driveway and killed the engine. Brittany was in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone. She was exactly as Linda had imagined, young, pretty in a generic Instagram way, with long blonde extensions and acrylic nails. "This is it." Brittany looked up at the house. "It's kind of small." "It's a nice house," Robert said defensively. "Linda and I raised our daughter here." "If you say so." Brittany went back to her phone. Robert unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The house was dark. He flipped the light switch. Nothing. That's weird. He tried another switch. Still nothing. "Did she shut off the power?" Brittany asked from the doorway. "She wouldn't. I mean, she said I could get my stuff." But even as he said it, Robert felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. He walked to the kitchen and tried the faucet. Nothing. No water. "Robert, it's freezing in here." Brittany wrapped her arms around herself. "Why is it so cold?" Robert went to the thermostat in the hallway. The display was dead. He tried adjusting it. Nothing happened. "She shut everything off," he said slowly. "The power, the water, the heat." "Everything? Can she do that?" "It's her house." Robert felt like he was seeing the situation clearly for the first time. "It's always been her house. I just lived here." "Well, this is bullshit." Brittany pulled out her phone. "I'm not helping you move stuff in the dark. Call an electrician or something. It's Saturday, and even if I could get someone here, I can't turn on utilities in a house I don't own." They stood in the cold, dark house, and for the first time since he'd made his decision, Robert felt doubt creeping in. It took them 4 hours to move Robert's belongings in the dark. They had to use flashlights from the U-Haul and the fading afternoon light.
Brittany stopped helping after the first hour, sitting in the truck with the heater running, complaining on her phone to her friends about the crazy ex-wife. Robert loaded boxes of clothes, his books, his golf clubs, his personal items. He'd told Linda to keep the furniture, so he left the bedroom set, the living room furniture, the dining room table where they'd eaten thousands of meals together. In the master bedroom, packing the last of his clothes, Robert found a wedding photo he'd forgotten about. It had been on Linda's nightstand. 30 years ago, both of them so young, so happy, so certain they'd figured out the secret to life. He looked at the photo for a long time, then put it in a box. By the time they finished, it was dark. The U-Haul was loaded. Robert locked the front door and left the key on the porch, as promised. "Thank God that's over," Brittany said as they pulled away. "Your ex-wife is psychotic." "She's not psychotic. She's smart." Robert looked back at the house in the side mirror. "Smarter than me, apparently." "Whatever. Let's just go home. I'm exhausted." Brittany examined her nails. "Oh, and babe, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. My business opportunity, the one I told you about. I need to move on it, like, now, but I'm a little short on capital. How short? 20,000? Maybe 25? It's a sure thing, I promise. I'll pay you back in like 6 months. Robert gripped the steering wheel. 25,000.
On top of the 15 he'd already given her. On top of the credit card debt he'd racked up, taking her to nice restaurants, buying her gifts, trying to prove he wasn't just another old guy with money. "Let me think about it," he said. "Don't think too long, babe. Opportunities like this don't wait around." In Seattle, Linda and Emma settled into a comfortable routine. They went to Pike Place Market, took the ferry to Bainbridge Island, had long dinners where they talked about everything except Robert. But Linda was watching, waiting.
Marcus called her a week after Robert had moved his stuff out. He tried to turn the utilities back on at the house. And the utility companies told him he'd need to provide proof of ownership or a lease agreement. He couldn't, obviously, because he doesn't own the property and has no legal right to be there. What did he do? Called you about 20 times. Did you block his number? Not blocked, just forwarding to voicemail. Linda was sitting on Emma's balcony, looking out at Elliott Bay. The water was grey and calm. What else? He's having money trouble. The credit card companies are calling. And Brittany, or Bethany, or whatever she's calling herself, just hit him up for another 25 grand. Did he give it to her? He tried, but his bank flagged it as suspicious and froze his account pending fraud review. Linda felt a grim satisfaction. How's he handling it? Not great. I've been watching her place. He looks stressed, lost weight. She's still posting bikini pics on Instagram and going out with her friends while he's at work. How romantic. Linda sipped her wine. It's almost time. Time for what? To end this. Linda returned to Westchester 2 weeks later. She called Tommy Rodriguez, who came out and restored the HVAC system. She called the utility companies and had everything turned back on. The house hummed back to life, like it had been holding its breath. Then she called Detective Sarah Morrison at the Westchester County Police Department. "Detective Morrison, my name is Linda Chen. I'd like to report a fraud case." The evidence Marcus had compiled was damning. Bethany Sullivan's previous convictions, her pattern of behavior, the fake identity document she'd used to become Brittany Summers, the financial records showing how she'd systematically drained Robert's accounts. Linda had also included something else, a notarized statement detailing exactly when Robert had left the marital home, taking only his personal belongings and explicitly stating he wanted nothing from the property.
If Robert tried to come back and claim he had rights to the house, Linda had documentation proving he'd voluntarily abandoned it. "Ms. Chen, why are you reporting this?" Detective Mawson asked during their meeting. "You're not the victim here. Your ex-husband is." "Because she's going to do this to someone else if no one stops her, and because," Linda paused, "because Robert might be a fool, but he doesn't deserve to be robbed." Detective Mawson studied her. "That's generous, given what he did to you." "It's not generous. It's the right thing to do." Linda stood up. "And detective, when you arrest her, please don't tell Robert I was the one who reported it." "Let him think it was the bank's fraud investigation." "Why?" "Because I want him to figure out on his own what a mistake he made." The arrest happened on a Thursday morning. Bethany Sullivan was taken into custody at her apartment while Robert was at work. The police found evidence of multiple ongoing scams, credit cards in other people's names, fake business documents, bank account information for at least 3 other victims. Robert came home to find the police searching the apartment and his girlfriend in handcuffs. "Robert, baby, this is a mistake," Bethany was crying, her mascara running. "Tell them."
Tell them I didn't do anything, Detective Morrison asked. Robert stared at Bethany. What? Don't listen to them. They're lying. I love you, Robert. Tell them. Sir, do you have documentation of any money you gave to Miss Sullivan? We're going to need it for the case. Robert felt like he was underwater. The apartment, Brittany's apartment, which he'd been paying rent on for the last month, suddenly looked different, smaller, cheaper. The furniture was mostly IKEA. The art on the walls came from Home Goods.
The luxury lifestyle she'd presented on Instagram was all fake, all smoke and mirrors. "How much did you give her?" Detective Morrison asked gently. "About 40,000, Robert whispered. "Maybe more." Bethany stopped crying. Her face went cold. "You're broke anyway, old man. I should have left you weeks ago." They took her away. Robert stood in the apartment, his apartment now, since his name was on the lease, and tried to understand what had just happened. He called Linda that night. She'd been expecting it. "Linda, it's me." "Hello, Robert." Can we talk? In person?" "I don't think that's a good idea." "Please, I need to see you. There's so much I need to say." Linda sighed. "Fine. Tomorrow." 2 p.m. at the Starbucks on Main. Robert looked terrible. He'd lost weight, his clothes didn't fit right, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He was drinking black coffee, his hands shaking slightly as he lifted the cup. "Thank you for meeting me," he said. "You have 20 minutes. Brittany was arrested. Did you hear?" "I saw it on the news. The local paper had run a story. Local woman arrested in multi-state fraud scheme." "She wasn't who I thought she was. None of it was real." Robert laughed bitterly. "I'm such an idiot." "Yes," Linda said simply. "You are. I left you. I left our life, our home, everything we built. And for what? For someone who was just using me. Who never loved me at all. Robert, why am I here?" He looked up at her. "I want to come home." Linda had been expecting this too. "No." "Linda, please. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you. I made a terrible mistake, the worst mistake of my life. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can... Robert, listen to me very carefully. You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. You chose to cheat on me. You chose to leave me. You chose to believe a woman you'd known for 8 months over the wife who stood by you for 30 years. Those were all choices. I know, but I'm not finished. You left me in that house with nothing but a clean break and an apology. You took your clothes and walked away from 30 years like it meant nothing. So I did the same. I moved on. I'm filing for divorce next week. We can fight for this. I love you, Linda. I've always loved you. Maybe you did, but you loved your ego more. You loved feeling young more. You loved the fantasy of starting over more. Linda gathered her purse. And now you get to start over, just not with me. What am I supposed to do? Figure it out. You're a big boy, Robert. You wanted to be free? Congratulations. You're free. She stood up to leave. The house, Robert said suddenly. At least let me buy out my half of the house. It's only fair. Linda turned back. Your half? Robert, you never owned half of that house.
You never owned any of that house. It was mine before we married, and it stayed mine throughout our marriage. Check the deed if you don't believe me. Robert's face went pale. But I lived there. I paid for renovations. You paid for some renovations with joint funds, which I'll be happy to document in the divorce proceedings.
But the property itself? That's 100% mine. Always was. You planned this. All of it. Shutting off the utilities, making it impossible for me to get my stuff, setting me up. I didn't set you up, Robert. You did that all by yourself. I just protected my assets, something you should have thought about before you moved in with a con artist. Linda headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Robert?
Your daughter doesn't want to see you. She said to tell you that until you can apologize without making excuses, you shouldn't bother calling. Linda left him sitting there, staring into his cold coffee. Epilogue, 6 months later. The divorce was finalized in September. Linda kept the house, her retirement accounts, and her business. Robert got his personal property, half of their joint savings, which wasn't much after Bethany had drained him, and an expensive lesson in humility. Bethany Sullivan was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for fraud and identity theft. Robert's testimony helped convict her, though he'd been humiliated by having to admit in court how easily he'd been manipulated. Linda redecorated the master bedroom. She painted over the beige walls Robert had always preferred and chose a deep teal that made her happy. She bought new bedding, hung different artwork, made the space entirely hers. Emma visited for Thanksgiving, bringing her girlfriend, Sarah, a software engineer she'd met at work, who made her laugh and who called Linda the most badass woman I've ever met. "How are you doing, Mom? Really?" Emma asked as they prepared the turkey. "I'm good, sweetie. Really good." And it was true. Linda felt lighter than she had in years. Free. Have you thought about dating? Maybe eventually. Right now, I'm just enjoying being alone.
It's different from being lonely. What about Dad? Linda shrugged. Your father is figuring out how to live with his choices. That's not my problem anymore. Robert had moved into a small apartment in White Plains. He was still working, trying to rebuild his credit and his life. He'd sent Linda a long email on what would have been their 31st anniversary, apologizing again, explaining how lost he'd felt, how much he regretted everything. Linda had read it once and then deleted it. Some things didn't need a response. On Christmas Eve, Linda invited Patricia Wong and Marcus Chen over for dinner, along with Emma and Sarah and a few friends from her accounting practice. The house was full of laughter and warmth and people who actually cared about her. As she looked around her dining room table, in her house, surrounded by people she'd chosen, Linda felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I hope you're happy. You got everything you wanted. R." Linda looked at the text for a moment, then deleted it and blocked the number. She was happy, but not because she'd gotten revenge, or because Robert was suffering, or because she'd won some battle. She was happy because she'd remembered something her mother had told her years ago. You can't control what other people do to you, but you can always control how you respond. Linda had responded by protecting herself, maintaining her dignity, and refusing to be a victim. Robert had made his choices. Now he got to live with them. And Linda? Linda got to live her life. She raised her wine glass to the table. "To new beginnings," she said. Everyone clinked glasses and echoed her toast. Outside, snow began to fall on Sycamore Drive, covering everything in clean white silence. Inside, Linda Chen was finally home. The end. Author's note: financial abuse in relationships affects millions of people each year. If you or someone you know is experiencing financial control, manipulation, or fraud within a relationship,
Resources are available through the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Remember, you always have the right to protect your assets and your future.